Today we're going to look at the Xmen game on Sega Genesis. I love this game to death and it's one of my all-time favorites. But enough about me, let's talk about this game. Xmen was released in 1993 on the Genesis, published by Sega, and developed by a company called Western Technologies Inc. that had developed various licensed games for a variety of systems back into the early 80s. Perhaps most notably, Spider-Man on the Sega Genesis in 1995. Another surprising note is that this company is the creator of the Vectrex gaming system. This company would later be absorbed by Wanderlust in the year 1997. It should also be considered that Xmen was very popular at this time. The animated series had debuted just 1 year prior, so this was likely an attempt to cash in on that wave. Side-scrolling action platformers like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Captain America and the Avengers were dominating the market, offering accessible gameplay and familiar characters. Xmen aimed to tap into this established genre and appeal to fans craving a similar experience with their favorite mutants. Xmen features 4 playable characters: Gambit, Wolverine, Cyclops, and Nightcrawler. Each of these characters is outfitted with a basic jump, a basic attack, and a mutant power option. Each one plays a little differently. Nightcrawler can teleport through any object in the game, making him ideal for beating certain stages quickly or circumventing hard areas. As a side bonus, this power can be used while stationary without going anywhere and does some of the highest damage to enemies in the game while making Nightcrawler invulnerable to damage while activated. A further note is that Nightcrawler can bring the second player with him when he teleports as long as they are standing on the same spot when it's activated. Wolverine can extend his adamantium claws and augment his regular attacks. As a bonus, Wolverine also has his mutant healing factor in full effect. As time passes, Wolverine will slowly regenerate health. A small caveat with Wolverine is that, while any other character can deplete their mutant power without consequences, aside from not being able to use their power obviously, Wolverine will go into a berserker rage of sorts if you try to extend his claws while his meter is empty. He jumps and moves wildly while attacking in random directions, and can even die from this. So be careful, it's honestly kind of hilarious. Cyclops is stuck to using his hands and feet for basic attacks and can shoot either a small beam or a slightly larger charged beam in various directions. Though if you do his somersault jump, he can release a really useless multi-directional laser attack. Gambit utilizes his trusty staff and can toss kinetically charged cards that wobble back and forth around the character. While Gambit, as always, looks pretty badass, he's pretty straight up bad as a character. Easily the worst in the roster, but still fun to play. All 4 of the characters also have an extra jump if you quickly double tap the jump button. Each of them jump just a bit higher, though Gambit and Cyclops also do a spinning flourish when this happens. The concept of the game is rather genius in the sense that the badass Magneto has taken over the Danger Room and is sending the X-Men into increasingly difficult challenges that can cause actual harm to the team. The Danger Room provides an excuse to be taken into any area and fight any enemy without any real consideration. This culminates in a final simulated stage with a really amazing component that I'll get to later. But the X-Men visit a variety of locations in the game, including the Savage Lands, the Shi'ar Empire, Asteroid M, and more. I'll take a look at each of these stages in just a moment. This game also features co-op gameplay. 2 players can each choose an X-Man and play simultaneously on the same screen. Be cautious though, if a character dies in the game, they are no longer selectable moving forward until the game is reset or completed. You have the option of changing out which X-Man you're playing with while in mid-stage a few times per level, so if a character gets too close to death, that player can choose to swap out to another character to finish out the level in order to keep a full roster. Prior to beginning each stage, the characters begin in the Danger Room for a briefing with Professor Xavier, and after the first stage, the area features floating orbs that have increasingly erratic movements as the game carries on. But hitting these orbs restore health and mutant power if you have previously swapped out a character and are in need of restoration, because their health does not reset upon completing a stage. There are also a few support members of the team that can't be played directly, but can be called in for damage dealing or other support throughout the stage a limited number of times. These include Storm, Iceman, Archangel, Rogue, and Jean Grey to some extent. Storm drops down to cause some meteorological havoc, Archangel flies by 3 times shooting projectiles each time, Iceman creates a temporary bridge, and Rogue pops in for just 1 hit on an enemy. These are oftentimes best deployed for boss fights if you need them. Jean Grey is really only used to bring back characters to the stage if they fall off and has no attack related to her. While Nightcrawler is certainly broken in this game, he simultaneously feels amazing to play. Once you get the timing on his mutant power down, it becomes an amazing attack, and feels good to tap it just in time to avoid incoming damage from enemies or bosses. Aside from using his standard air attack to get increased speed and move through the stages, you could beat the entire game with only application of his mutant ability, and quicker than any of the other characters considering he can skip substantial portions of Shi'ar, Lighthouse, and Asteroid M stages. And while use of mutant power generally drains your meter, a quick tap application of Nightcrawler's doesn't really deplete his meter at all, but teleporting any significant distance takes up quite a lot. Each stage is fairly unique in terms of design, though some are more interesting than others. To begin the game, the Xmen are taken to the Savage Lands. This stage features a dense sort of jungle environment with many tall trees and wooden structures throughout. There isn't a lot going on in this stage. It's a pretty simple introduction to the game mechanics without much in the way of bottomless pits or difficult enemies. You have basic enemies that jump towards you, and a spear-wielding enemy that can toss them at you in one of two directions, either directly at you or at an angle if you're below them. Occasionally, depending on how high in the trees you are, or where you're at in the stage, there are pterodactyls that come by. You even get to ride on one later in the level. There's a puzzle of sorts on this stage requiring the player to hit a certain switch to progress, or teleport through if you're Nightcrawler, but outside of that, it's pretty straightforward, though about halfway through you'll encounter a mini-boss in the form of Juggernaut. He's fairly easy and often runs off the stage on his own accord depending on where you're at when he starts charging. Once you make your way to the end, you'll have a pretty easy battle with Zaldane. She jumps about the level and is invincible when she's charging her attack, but the idea is to hit her immediately after she attacks or as soon as she lands. This is very easy with Wolverine or Nightcrawler due to their diagonal attacks in the air. The second stage takes the Xmen to the Shi'ar Empire. I really love this stage and it has some awesome music. Enemies in this stage will be armored troops of various colors. The silver is the standard enemy, and the gold enemy is a little stronger in terms of damage it takes to be defeated. Later on in the stage, there are also flying troops. This stage is a little more complicated in terms of progression. Certain gates and areas are locked behind keys that need to be picked up, or elevators by switches that need to be triggered. Nightcrawler can, of course, skip most of these problems. At the end of the stage, you take a spaceship ride to another area and face the boss, Deathbird. Her movement techniques are pretty similar to Zaldane in that she jumps back and forth and fires once she lands. She doesn't have invincibility periods though, so she's vulnerable at all times and is pretty easy to predict and defeat, though she has a few regular enemies hanging out in the area to mix things up. Next up is the Excalibur Lighthouse. This area begins on some rocky formations as you make your way towards the lighthouse. This area also features a mini-boss in the form of Sabretooth, but he's easily skippable. When you come to this area, the boss is only triggered if you step on the lower platform, so just call Iceman to make a bridge across and you'll never encounter him. He can be a little tough due to his movements, but if you choose to fight him, he's not that bad. I always just skip past him though. Once you make your way to the lighthouse proper, it's similarly gated like the previous level. Switches must be hit in various levels before moving up or down respectively. The goal is the elevator shaft on the far right side of the lighthouse and, like other stages before it, Nightcrawler can circumvent this whole ordeal and teleport straight to the elevator. If you don't, you'll face Juggernaut again halfway through the lighthouse. At the top awaits Apocalypse. He's fairly predictable and only really performs one function. If he's small, he'll start powering up, and once finished, he'll walk towards you and attempt to punch you. After that, he'll power down and become smaller, at which point he's vulnerable. So you have to bait the attack out and punish him quickly, then the cycle repeats. This is, as usual, made much easier with Nightcrawler, as you can just hold teleport and his attack will miss, automatically dealing damage in return. Though you'll want to move as soon as the damage is dealt to Apocalypse, because you'll run out of mutant power trying to wait around stationary the whole time. He can dispense energy as well, but it's rare and requires you to be pretty far from him. Next, the Xmen are taken to a futuristic dystopian hellscape. Some consider this stage to be pretty hard, but I think it's relatively easy once you get the hang of it. There are plenty of bottomless pits to fall into and acid piles to be found that cause damage, as well as a variety of enemies. I think the stage is obviously easier with Wolverine or Nightcrawler, due to the aforementioned horizontal movement they have, but it can be done with any character. Nightcrawler can't skip much in this stage aside from a few progress gates, but the keys are generally very close and it's not a lot of time saving, but he's still the best character to use as always. Sentinels are present in this stage, but they're immobile aside from being able to rise and fall vertically. They'll charge and shoot a laser beam towards you from afar. Other enemies can warp into existence and crawl upon the ground rather quickly, while if you head to the top level, portals open that bring 3 little planes which can attack you and deal quite a lot of damage. But there's no point to go to the top level until it's necessary, so it's wise to avoid it in general. You should also make sure you're pretty familiar with the extra jump. You'll need it here or be stuck in a pit forever when hitting some of the switches. Eventually you'll make your way to the boss of this stage, Ahab. Ahab is fairly easy, but you need to become familiar with his pattern. As always, this boss is easiest to beat with Nightcrawler, but it can be done with anyone. The basic function is this: he'll appear and toss a spear, then disappear, then reappear and toss another spear. You can't harm him unless his entire body has appeared, and about half the time he will only poke out to toss a spear. But even when his body is present, you have to avoid the spear toss. Once you've defeated Ahab and regrouped in the danger room, it's time for Mojo's Crunch. This level stands out from the others because it has a time limit attached, but aside from the first few times you're playing it, becoming familiar, it shouldn't be that concerning for you. There are even more bottomless pits on this level, and perhaps something I should have mentioned. Each sequential level, the character takes more and more damage from falling off of the stage, so don't fall. This level can be a little confusing at first, but once you get it down, it's one of the easier levels to complete. There are dog-like creatures that can charge after you, flying creatures that launch projectiles or swipe at you when you come too close, and exploding televisions. There are areas set with many televisions that you have to be rushed through, or sets that alternate which one explodes. In general, these will get you the first time you encounter them, but you should be able to manage on subsequent playthroughs or attempts. Mojo can be tough until you learn how he works. He cannot be damaged from the front. He'll just laugh at you. But you can easily get him into an easy-to-perform loop that pretty much can't fail. And this is the boss that Cyclops shines, in my opinion. Aside from being able to avoid damage with little notice, Nightcrawler really doesn't have a benefit in this battle. But Cyclops, with his aimable projectile, does. It can be done with anyone, but I prefer Cyclops for this battle. Basically all that you need to do is lure him to either side, jump to the platform above him as he's coming your way, then jump as high and as far out as you can to the opposite side of the arena. He'll launch a projectile at you that will miss, and you can quickly hit him in the back. If you are playing as Cyclops, you can hit him on the way down from this jump, making for a higher chance of hitting Mojo before he turns back around. Rinse, wash, repeat, and Mojo is toast. But the level doesn't end there. That's right, the timer is still going and you've got farther to go. After you're making your way through a couple more areas, you'll find yourself in a locked room. This moment is a really awesome fourth wall breaking component of this game that I've highlighted before in another video. When the player gets to the end of Mojo's Crunch stage, they're expected to do something that's hard to fathom at first: reset the console physically. While there are some slight hints that this is necessary, it's never really spelled out for you explicitly aside from the statement that you need to, quote, reset the system, unquote. But who would really think they're talking about the actual Sega Genesis system itself? That's right, you have to hit the reset button when you're at this point and then the game will proceed forward. This was confounding and simultaneously amazing when I finally figured it out all those years ago out of desperation. Absolutely one of my most memorable aspects of this game, or any game for me. Once you've completed Mojo's stage, it's on to the final stage to face the Master of Magnetism, Asteroid M. This is certainly one of the harder stages due to the larger holes in the floor and some areas of moving platforms. The enemies are equipped with an energy gun of some sort that traps you in a ring when you're hit by it. If you try to press directional buttons while entrapped, you'll just take more damage. Best not to get hit. You can skip some of this stage with Nightcrawler, but it's not too bad to simply play through, and the skips aren't that large, but they are helpful. I usually like to play through this level with Nightcrawler and then switch to Wolverine for the epic showdown with Magneto. He can be a bit tough, as with all bosses, until you figure out the pattern. Magneto flies around invincible most of the time, but when he lands on platforms, he's vulnerable. The best two for this are Wolverine and Nightcrawler due to the horizontal movement of their air attacks, but it can be done easily enough with the others since they have projectiles. Once you've defeated Magneto, it's over. You're given a bit of an epilogue and a sort of cutscene to finish out the game, though there is a small flash in Mojo's laugh after the end credits, always leaving one to wonder. It's an awesome game. In 2011, IGN highlighted Xmen on their 15 really hard games article, citing various issues, such as unfairly placed enemies, ridiculously annoying jumps, and near impossible to beat bosses. While I personally think this is nonsense, it does have a reputation for being a difficult game. Taking each of these points one by one, enemy placement does have an occasional feeling of being cheap, particularly on the final stage Asteroid M, considering it also has many bottomless pits. Personally, I wouldn't say that overall they are unfairly placed, aside from a few key moments. These placements are also static, so after playing the level a few times, you should be well aware of their placement. Ridiculously annoying jumps. This I can at least see where they're coming from. There are two types of jumps available to the player in this game, and they're locked behind certain characters. Nightcrawler has the best jump in the game, as he can natively make large horizontal strides by doing an attack in the air. This allows the player to cover large distances very easily. Not only that, but you can adjust horizontal trajectory mid-jump for very versatile movement. None of the other characters share this style of jump or jumping attack. They are limited to mostly vertical movement with somewhat limited horizontal movement, and this can make some jumps in the game trickier. Wolverine is an exception to this rule, as when he has his claws extended and performs an attack in the air, he does a slashing sort of move that causes him to move a much larger horizontal distance than he would normally. These can be used in sequence for a pretty good range. Gambit and Cyclops are simply out of luck and have to perform the jumps more accurately or call on the help of Iceman, who makes an elongated platform starting from wherever you call him at. Near impossible to beat bosses. This one is really curious. The bosses are fairly easy with a few exceptions. They are heavily patterned and respond to certain actions, so it's pretty easy to learn the mannerisms of the bosses in this title. I enjoy most of the boss fights in this game, but the damages dealt by them can be somewhat high if you aren't quick to move, and Ahab is pretty fast and specific. Half the time the first mini-boss, Juggernaut, jumps off the stage on his own accord, but is otherwise pretty easily defeated. Some bosses are entirely skippable with the right conditions, such as the second encounter with Juggernaut or Sabretooth. In fact, I don't blame anyone who uses Nightcrawler and skips the entirety of the Excalibur Lighthouse stage. Well, straight to the boss fight with Apocalypse anyway. Suffice to say, I mostly disagree with this assessment. I mean, they included Metal Gear Solid on this list, so take that as you will. Is it a challenging game? Certainly. Does it deserve to be on a list of some of the hardest games ever? I don't believe so. But I also played the hell out of this all those years ago. A lot of people will cite Clone Wars or other titles of their favorite X-Men game, and I understand. Look at that amazing box art. But this one is definitely mine. I prefer the grittier looking visual style and the awesome soundtrack. This is my favorite X-Men game for sure. Listen to this awesome tune that only plays for a few seconds in the end of the Shi'ar stage. A real tragedy. I recently replayed and beat this game and enjoyed almost every second of it. If you're into X-Men or Retro Genesis games, I strongly advise giving it a shot, especially if you have a friend to play the two-player mode. It has great visual style and solid gameplay mechanics that feel pretty good to master, even if they are relatively simple. Boss fights can provide an initial challenge, but it feels good to nail down that pattern and school them. Or just learn to abuse Nightcrawler. That's fun too. I hope you enjoyed this retrospective on X-Men for Sega Genesis. I hope to do more of these in which I take a look at older games that I enjoyed a lot and shine a little spotlight on them. If you'd like to see some gameplay, I've included a button here taking you to my full playthrough of this game, and you're welcome to check it out. If you enjoyed this video, please feel free to like, or drop a comment below with your experiences on this game. Subscribing helps illustrate to me that this content resonates with people out there and encourages me to do more, so that's never frowned upon. Until next time.